Isn't homework time just the most dreadful thing ever? The child wants to argue and say things like, oh, I've done it, or I haven't got any, or I did it in class time, or break time, or I've forgotten my books. And you know there's a lot of hiding going on. How scary is that for the child? The child has been in the lesson, knows that he or she hasn't taken in the information necessary so that they understand it and they can do the homework. Imagine how lonely, how horrible, how low they must feel to cause those arguments. So the arguments aren't because they want to argue, the arguments are because they just don't know what to do and they daren't admit it. It's heartbreaking. So it wasn't just my daughter that was in tears. It was I that was sometimes in tears because of those issues. So if you've got fed up with those tears and arguments, please understand that all those strategies they're using, they're just avoiding the truth that learning for him or her is extremely hard work. Well, what is it? Well, the fact is, if they're struggling with learning, it's because they aren't taking in what they were taught. And they now need what they've been taught to do their homework. So not understanding that can be cruel and can be very traumatic. So please do understand it. So what's going on? Well, the ability to learn is determined by the development of a specific part of the brain. It's called the cerebellum. It's the bit where we learn skills, where we develop things, where we develop the ability to take in and give out information. So one area in particular is our listening skills. If our listening skills, our auditory processing as it's called, isn't fully developed, then just listening, taking in information so you can retain it, is incredibly hard work. We sometimes say of people that we can see their cogs whirring. What we mean is that there is an extra mental process necessary just to take in information. That's what the extra cogs are. Yes, they are indeed extra cogs. It's extra processing that's needed here in the thinking brain. For most of us, listening, understanding what we hear is automatic. We might think about it afterwards to put it in perspective and context, but the very process of listening so you can understand it in the first place should be automatic, but for some children it isn't. That's a processing issue, an auditory processing issue, and it's a skill that hasn't yet developed. So many wrongly assume that these children are unintelligent. That is very, very rarely the case. Yes, it can be the case, but it's rare. It's very rare. Normally it's the skill turning those sound waves they hear into thoughts they can instantly comprehend. It's a skill that hasn't yet fully developed. So they need understanding. They're not choosing to not take in the information. They can't take in the information. In actual fact, very often children have worked so hard listening to a sentence and working it out that the teacher is 3 sentences on by the time they've finished processing that first sentence. So these children need understanding. So what can you do about it? Well, one good way that's allowed more and more in schools is to use a recorder so the child has got the chance to go over it more slowly later, especially critical for important lessons where there's a new topic coming up. And sometimes the teacher will be prepared to provide notes rather than making the child copy from the board. I've seen so many children just fall out of the whole school system because this whole pattern of learning was the teacher writes on the board and the children have to copy it. There's no merit there. The very process of copying for some is so cruelly hard that they're working hard just copying, they're actually taking in nothing. So for many children, it's a crazy way to teach them. Yes, a few children do learn by copying, but very few do, and an awful lot just don't. If the child has got a serious issue, then you can think about getting a scribe, and that's allowed and supported in some education areas, and I think that's a great idea until you can find and deal with the root cause of why their skills haven't developed. Important for children like this is to know what their learning style is, and teachers must find out what their learning style is and how they learn best, and make sure they teach in a way that covers the topic so that the child gets it. That means the teacher has got to be very flexible and use different learning styles for the different children in the class. And I know when class sizes are big. I sympathise with teachers because that's very, very hard to do. But make sure, and you may need some meetings on this topic with the teacher, make sure the teacher understands what your child's learning style is and how to engage with them, how to stimulate them, how to teach them so that they learn. It's the responsibility of our education system to teach children, not to provide teachers in the hope that children will learn. Their responsibility goes far, far further than that. But the fact is, even to this day, teacher training rarely includes anything significant about the process of learning in the brain, where the cerebellum is, what the cerebellum does to enable learning, to enable your child to retain information so that they can use it later. And all of this is nothing to do with the underlying level of intelligence. So understanding your child is critical. Getting the teachers to understand your child, the siblings, the friends, the family, to all understand that this is not a sign of unintelligence and might in fact be the exact opposite. So have hope, work on the root cause, understand the learning style, make sure everybody else understands, because low self-esteem goes with these issues hand in hand, and low self-esteem is horrific. And for many children that are not understood, it's like they live every day with a trauma, and for some it affects them the whole of their lives. So understand, reduce their stress, pamper to their learning styles, and I hope you get a good result. So I hope this has been of some information, useful information to you, and I hope it gives you some hope for your child. They may well be much brighter than at the moment they're getting credit for. All the best.